Hey there, this is Marlon from MarlonMcPherson.com, and today I'm going to be talking about backing up your WordPress website so you can always have something to go back to in case anything was to go wrong. Coming up. All right, so backing up your website is really important to do because it can be vulnerable to threats online. And if something was to go wrong with the website and you don't have a backup version of that site to go back to, it can cost you dearly in terms of money, having to rebuild the site, or it costs you in terms of your reputation. So it's important to make sure that you have regular backups done and you have everything kept up to date and secure so that you can always have that as an option to go back to. So I'm going to be referencing this blog post that I've got here on my site. I've left a link, or I will leave a link to it inside the description of the podcast here. By the way, if you're new here to my content, I do content like this to help you with your online strategy around your website and your content so you can grow your business, grow your brand, and get more organic reach. So do make sure that you stick around and check out some of my other episodes and my videos as well on YouTube if you're not listening to the podcast. So let's talk about some things that can go wrong with your website in the first place and why a backup would be important to have. So one of the things that could happen is that you could get viruses or malware on the website, and this is where malicious code enters your website somehow. This is usually through some sort of exploitation of a security vulnerability within the software. So a hacker might be able to exploit this vulnerability and get into the site somehow, or in the code of the site, and inject their own code. For whatever reason, you have to get into the heads of these people to know really what their motivation is. You can research that to see why people generally do this, or why hackers normally do this. And you know, they have their own motivations and they want to get into people's sites so they can use it for their own gain. Other times, it might not be a human being that's necessarily sitting there doing this. It could be programs designed to go out there and exploit these vulnerabilities. And they can get in through basically hacking their way through your password if you have weak passwords, or you know, some other way that you've left your site open so they get access to it. They might be able to enter viruses and stuff like that into the software. So you just need to be careful about how your security is set up. Now, the other thing that can go wrong is that you could have bad software updates. So WordPress, or any site that has a content management system for that matter, will always have multiple pieces of software running to provide the features and the functionality of the site. In the case of WordPress, which is what I'm talking about, there are plugins and there's WordPress itself plus the theme that runs on the site. And these are constantly being updated to patch security vulnerabilities or to make them more secure in general, because it's always a cat and mouse game. As soon as software develops and closes off one aspect of it, the hackers, or the bad actors as they call some of these people, are always trying to find ways to get in and crack the code. So you want to make sure you run these updates, and sometimes these updates can go wrong and break a site. Just like with anything else, if you update software on your computer or on your phone, it might not behave in the same way as it was in the previous version, and sometimes you have to go back to an older version until the bugs get sorted out and so on. So if, say, a plugin was to break or software was to break the site badly, you want to make sure that you have a backup that you can go back to. If you cannot sort of like uninstall that piece of software, you want to go back to a stable version of that until they can, as in the developers can actually fix that. The next thing that can happen is that human error can happen, where you delete a file or a folder on your website, or you just like something, you did something and you didn't know what you did wrong, and you need to really recover from that. That's a reason for you to actually have a backup as well. Now, there are several ways that you can back up your WordPress website, and I'm going to talk about that right now. So I'm just going to run through some plugins that you would use. Well, actually, first of all, you can back up the site using plugins, and you can back up also on the server side of things with the hosting. So I recommend that you have multiple layers, so have some redundancy there. So usually what I do is I back up using the WordPress solutions, but are also in some cases, depending on the risk involved, I will back up as well using another means on the server. Now, the most common way is to do it through WordPress using a plugin. So there are 2 plugins that I use and I recommend. So Updraft Plus is the main one that I use, and this allows me to back up the site files separate to where the site is. So it's not being backed up to the same server, it's being backed up somewhere else. I actually back up remotely. So I actually back up to cloud storage. I use Amazon S3, but you can use Google Drive or whichever cloud that connects with Updraft Plus. So therefore, if something was to happen, and as long as you have access to the back end of the site, you can go in and restore from one of your previous backups, and it pulls the files in from that external cloud storage or wherever you have those files kept. You can also download the files onto your computer, but it's not practical to do it like that way. Updraft Plus allows you to automate the backups as well. So then you can set them up on a schedule and basically decide how frequent and so on it will get backed up. Now, there's another plugin that I use sometimes called WP Vivid. This plugin does something similar, but I use it normally for more reliable migrations because it allows you to package up the site and remotely migrate the site from one to the next. So it has, or from one hosting to the next. So it has some features there that is more than just backup, but that's another option you can use to back up your site as well. So those are the ones that I have there for you. So once you've backed up your site, all you got to do is make sure that you test your backups from time to time and make sure everything's working fine. Sometimes if you when I say test, you might want to just back it up and then try and restore from that backup immediately, just as a precaution, because the last thing you want is for things not to be working correctly and then you actually need it and it doesn't work. So I recommend that you test your backups from time to time. And that's pretty much it. So having these backups are really important. There's no excuse. The Updraft Plus is actually free on WordPress. Obviously, you got to pay for your cloud storage that you're using to do to store the files. So that's something that you do need to consider to make sure that you have some layer of security there. That's what I've got for you today. And as usual, stay positive and take massive action. Hey there, I just wanted to jump in and say thank you for tuning in to another episode of Future Steps Creative, and I hope you found this episode informative or helpful. Also, if you'd love for me to help you directly with your content strategy or your website strategy, do reach out to me over on my website, marlonmcpherson.com. There are several ways that I can work with you, including helping you to figure out your overall strategy, as well as helping you with ongoing content creation so you can be consistent with attracting your ideal audience, as well as to help you with optimizing your user experience on your website for better conversions. I look forward to hearing from you soon, and I'll speak to you in the next one.